And yes, we are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient, still searching for the First Amendment wherever it is in Cranston, Rhode Island. We can be found on Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, Coalition_radio at the Mighty Twitter. Yes, that's our dulcet tunes of our new theme song. Yes, somewhere in Cranston.
Michael Gates from the Cranston Police Criminal Investigation Unit. Can you give me a call back, please, on my cell phone within the next half hour? My night is coming to an end, and I need to speak to you. What you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys.
Oh, Dave.
What am I going to do? Oh boy. Here, this is my next one. I'm moving up the ladder here at the Cranston PD. So, what happened to the captain? Oh, there he is. There's the captain.
I know you received a molested from Sergeant Gates. He's off today. If you can please give me a call back at 477-5143, just so I can verify any conversations you had with Mayor Fung last night. And again, 477-5143. Thank you so much for returning my call.
Dave, what are you going to? What are we going to do with you, Dave?
Well, I know the first thing I did was call Kate Nagel over at Go Local Prov, and then I called the lawyer.
Right. Wait, of course, that's an interesting order, but who accomplished more for us this week than the goddess of alternative media, Kate Nagel, GoLocalProv.com, our friends and allies in Indie Media here in Little Rhodey, almost our only ally here, it would seem.
Yeah. I've been getting beat up pretty good on the comment sections of a lot of stories and Facebook pages.
So social media has been interesting for us this week. Folks, if you're dialing in and you haven't heard about this controversy, the We're Not Listening tour that's been conducted across the state of Rhode Island by the fine folks who would bring you the Providence Stadium for the Pawtucket Red Sox landed this week, as it were, with the troops and all, in the Cranston Public Library. Now, let's remember, Cranston Public Library, that is funded by your tax dollars and mine, both on a federal and state and local level. Joined, of course, with the esteemed Dr. Steinberg, who really, really desperately, because if you look at the scores, if you look at the standings, and you look at social media this week, really needs to get back to dentistry, because the baseball thing ain't working out for you. Doc,
nor is the PR side job at this point.
Doc, think implants, think LASIK, whatever you got to do.
Teeth whitening, bleaching.
Right. Okay, please, for the love of God. Anyway, so, there they were in the Cranston Public Library, and what started out as a remarkably civil, I guess, give and take sessions a few weeks ago between members of the Paw Sox and members of the, the tax-paying public, the ones who you're asking to subsidize your little Fenway fantasy, have devolved, and I use the word devolved intentionally, into really the true epitome of a dog and pony show. Required sign-ins, although people, to their credit, aren't doing it. Putting down questions on cards so that they can be screened. Sid, whatever her name is, the former campaign chairman. McKenna, thank you. The former campaign chairman for the Vincent A. Buddy Cianci campaign, now being reduced to role as hall monitor, picking people out. And then, and it's on video at our website at coalitionradio.us, people unlike us, people mature, responsible, articulate, well-spoken individuals capable of maintaining long-term relationships, having the unmitigated the sheer nerve, the balls as they were, to ask questions and being shown the door by armed members of the Cranston Police Department. So
for not following the rules.
Right. In Bulgaria, you shoot pictures, we shoot you. All right? So I guess I took offense at that, and so did Dave. So I drew the lucky straw. I called the city councilman in Cranston and had a remarkably civil conversation about 5 at night. Dave, what happened to you?
I called the mayor of Cranston at home at his publicly listed number, folks. Whitepages.com is where I got the number. I had a less than cordial conversation with him, at least from his end of the conversation. I tried to carry myself in as professional a manner as I could, even offered to have an off-the-record conversation with him about it, to which he replied that I was harassing him and then sicked the Cranston police on me.
Right.
So about 2 hours after I spoke to the mayor, I got a call from the Criminal Investigation Unit of the Cranston Police Department. Which I was asleep at the time because, it's 11:16 at night, which is an unreasonable hour to call somebody, is it not?
Right. And by the way, I have mental images from one of the great movies of all time, and really sort of a cathartic moment in the movie. And, of course, that movie would be The Blues Brothers, when the entire law enforcement community of the state of Illinois and city of Chicago are launching themselves all over City Hall. I was picturing at this point Mayor Fung rolling out the tanks, his SWAT team, armed guards, dogs. That's the image I had.
Well, and
up 295.
Like I said in the intro, by the next morning when I received the second call from the Cranston Police Department, I had moved up the ladder, and I was now being called by a captain instead of a sergeant, which I really, to be perfectly honest, I felt intimidated at that point because I didn't feel that anything that I had done rose by any level the legal definition of harassment. I called a public official at a publicly listed number. Now we can argue whether 9 p.m. is a proper hour to call somebody, but I get calls from telemarketers at 9 p.m. So
we got robocalls from the Fung campaign last year at 8, 9 o'clock at night.
That's right.
So and here's the bigger point. We were lambasted by all sorts of real and imagined Fung supporters. I say imagine because the fake Facebook IDs are out there in force, who said, wait till the next day. Now, these are the very people. By affiliating themselves with Mayor Fung, I assume, based on Mayor Fung's assertions in the past, that these folks are, in fact, conservative Republicans. And if there is any group that has decried the presence of an aggressive media, all right, the absence of any harsh interrogation, if you will, of our public officials, whether it be anyone from Barack Obama to Hillary Clinton, if there's anyone who has stood for the abrogation of the conventional media, it would be conservative Republicans. But
you'd think that.
You would think that. But that's okay as long as it's not on their guy.
Right.
All right? So it's great.
And I think, how did I put this to you? It boggles the mind that how quickly a group of people that clamor for answers,
right,
how quickly they turn on someone that tries to get them some.
Right. And they clamor constantly for the emergence of a new media. They decry the decline of the Urinal. They look at WJR and say, where have you gone? There's no more investigative media. And when independent people start their own media company to fill that void, it's got to fit their storyline. I mean, the hypocrisy is astonishing. These are folks who work themselves into a figurative lather over whether or not the Obaministas held the umbrella for the Marine or not, or the Marine held the umbrella for Obama, just work themselves into a collective nervous breakdown. Yet, God forbid, when you have a clear abrogation of the First Amendment taking place in front of your eyes, it's documented on film, we're discussing it on major media, God forbid it should be an indictment of the guy you voted for.
And then to follow that up with an intimidation of the press.
Right. So how can you be so against the I know a guy cultivation, the civilization, when in fact you know a guy and you're tweaked because we had the temerity, the sheer gall, to call up and challenge who is the mighty Oz. And it would appear that Mr. Fung has failed yet another character test in that he seems to feel he is above the fray and above question. Yet the state police at this very moment are sitting on a report soon to be disclosed, I guess, at a Monday night Cranston Town Council meeting that would point towards his misuse of the Cranston Police Department and his preferential treatment to folks involved in the ticketing scandal, which are those same people who are still obsessed with what happened in the tidal basin by Hillary Clinton in 1992, 94, who knows, all right, seem to think is trivial.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever.
Well, it's the tolerance, like you said, the tolerance for this type of behavior is there as long as it's your guy.
Right.
As long as it's my guy. I got the same reaction last week from the quote Democrats in this state about the legislative grants. Here's a group of people that are always clamoring for more transparency and more accountability, yet they don't see a problem with this legislative grant process somehow.
Right, where there is no accountability.
Right.
Where money, real hard dollars, in a moribund economy and a collapsing Rhode Island state government are dispensed to people based on political patronage and where you stand in Paulie Walnut's Nikki Mattiello's food chain.
Yep.
So again, the hypocrisy is actually on both sides.
Sure.
You've got a Republican Chippendale supporting the establishment of a DNA database based on people who arrest, yet at the same time, literally willing to tie himself to a rail line to make sure that you don't have a gun registry. Yet at the same time, you have social and the allegedly progressive Democrats willing to look the other way when legislative grants are dispersed to hockey alumni associations. And then on the other side, we've got people being shown the door at public meetings. And again, the outrage is so incredibly selective. What's it going to take for people to shed their Kool-Aid drinking adherence to their own individual messiahs and look at the big picture in Rhode Island and understand that it's all corrupt? Everybody involved has pretty much allowed themselves to be corrupted by the process.
And I think you said it best. What needs to happen is people need to start taking this personally.
Right.
You have to take these things as a personal affront.
Right.
And in turn, you got to get up in people's grills when they do this stuff. You got to call them out.
Right. No, agreed. And probably there is no better segue to the guest we have tonight than that. So let's do a radio transition and give a big welcome to our guest in studio. And I want to preface his introduction with this sort of personal note. And I've remarked on this a couple of times, Dave. We've been doing the show for about 3 years. And one of the great parts of doing a radio show like this is that we get to meet all the people we've ever really wanted to meet. And we get to sit down and have a conversation with them. It's all, and it's we approach it that we're almost sitting in our living rooms, or maybe it's, in some cases, it's like been in our dorm room in college. And we have that conversation that we always had at 2 o'clock in the morning and really get down to the crux of certain issues. We refer to these conversations as what we call our heroes of civil disobedience. And in the last few years, we've been privileged enough to have Stephen Brown from the ACLU on just a few months ago. We've had Ray Rickman on a couple of times. We've had attorney Bob Mann on a few times.
Fred Ordonez.
Fred Ordonez from DARE. We've had folks from the Good Neighbor Fund. I mean, just across the board. Dawson Hodgson, who was a great candidate for Attorney General, and which we're going to touch on. And in a few minutes, we're going to tie that into tonight's conversation. So it is a great privilege that we have, and I will always call him, as a Methodist, the Reverend Phil West, joining us today. Phil is a retired executive director for Common Cause of Rhode Island, synonymous with the pitched battles that took place in our General Assembly and at the highest levels of Rhode Island government through the 80s and 90s into the new millennium. Retired minister, actually short-time employee of the Providence Journal. Who knew?
2 weeks.
All right. And I think...
never got your union card then.
I think really represents a unique voice in Rhode Island history and in Rhode Island current, in that he epitomizes to me what I call, and what we came up with this idea together, dignified outrage, in that he, over his entire career in assailing Rhode Island government, if you will, has managed to put a dignified, articulate, targeted, yet lethal form of outrage that has resulted in real changes in the way that Rhode Island government operates. So a big coalition welcome. Welcome to the Worldwide Coalition Network, the Reverend Phil West. Thanks for coming on today.
Thanks very much for having me. It's good to be with you.
The question comes up, and it's really particularly a reflection of our little opening here. You were involved in some of the biggest ethics battles in the 80s and 90s, and yet prior to your introduction on this show, you hear about some of the shenanigans that are taking place literally this week. In the 30 years or so that you've lived here in Little Brody, because you're not a native, your clear diction gives you away every moment. All right, do you see it coming full circle? Do you see a lot of the same problems that were in place back when you were active with the organization?
Well, they always say that history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. So I see things happening that ring true, ring familiar, and among the most common ones are the kind of resistance to change that comes from those in power. And the difficulty of those in power recognizing that they are doing the very things that sometimes they protested when they were on the outside or at the bottom.